I'm sitting here with Mike Connery, the president of OTB, and we're at the Teletheater, betting horses and having a great time. Why don't you come down and join us?
Opening up by 3, and Society Selection now moves to second. Storm Flag flying third on the outside. Board Eligible is fourth. It's all Sightseek. And Society Selection is second. And Sightseek says so long. And wins by 2.5 lengths at the end. Routinely brilliant she was today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Down the Stretch. Along with guest co-host Dave Litvin of Daily Racing Form, I'm Mark Casano, welcoming you to this morning's program. 2 weeks out from Breeders' Cup 21, we've got a big show in front of us, a number of races to look back at, all with Breeders' Cup implications, and we will also be presenting you with 2 very special guests. For right now, let's take a look at the lineup for this morning's program. During our topical discussion, unfortunately, more Breeders' Cup defections, including a probable favorite. We'll take a look at news on a local filly who'll have to miss this afternoon's QE2. And does John Service have another special one? Then our major stakes review, all with Breeders' Cup implications, featuring the Beldame, the Spinster, the Champagne, and the Frisette. Our guest this morning, Mr. Julio Canani, who will chat about Sweet Catamine, who may be the favorite for the juvenile fillies, as well as his mile starter Special Ring in Black Dune, and Patrick Niancone, the trainer of Sense of Style and Magistretti. So all of that and much, much more if you stay with us this morning on this special edition of Down the Stretch with our special guest co-host, Mr. Dave Litvin. Dave, welcome to the program.
All right, great to be here.
Nice to see you.
I kind of feel like Ed McMahon or Paul Schaefer or something like that.
Tell our audience who may not be totally familiar with you something about yourself, if you would.
Well, I started cutting class in junior high school to go out to Aqueduct by subway back when I was about 12. This was right when OTB was coming into town, so you could walk down the street and get a slice of pizza and bet on the ninth from Belmont. And I got hooked on the game. I was a sports fan, and it seemed like a sport that had a real immediacy to it. And it's been downhill ever since, I'm happy to say.
I remember, I go back a long way with Dave. I remember you coming up in the business. Was Steve Schwartz the head of the press department with NYRA at that time?
Yes.
Dave worked for the New York Racing Association, the press department. And now the lead handicapper for Daily Racing Form for how many years?
Since January 2nd, 1990, I started with the Racing Form. They had a little 99-cent daily called MetroTurf. This was back when Rupert Murdoch owned the paper, and they were trying to splash it up, a la the New York Post and things like that. And it lasted for about a year, and then they kind of assimilated the staff from that paper into the Racing Form, and been there ever since.
And now a very important question. My regular co-host, Mike Veach, couldn't be here at prior commitment this morning. He will return next week. But here's the most important question. Do you prefer warm weather or cold weather?
I prefer it a little warmer than it's probably going to be here in the coming weeks, but minus 10 like we had for about 2 weeks last winter was a little much.
Yeah, okay. All right, then we'll be fine over the next 85 minutes or so. All right, let's get you caught up on a number of happenings at the Albany Teletheater here over the next couple of weeks. I remind you of this every week, the OTB Teletheater. If you're an NFL fan, that's the place to be because they've got the NFL package. See all the games at the Albany Teletheater. And we want to remind you that when Michael returns next week, we will be moving our tax back to the Albany Teletheater, our show next week at our regular time, 10 to 11:30. And then here's a special programming note. October 30th, Breeders' Cup Day. The show begins at 9:30, will run to 11. And if you haven't gotten your Teletheater reservations yet, it's probably a good time to do it this afternoon. Call Maureen at 438-0127. Come out early on Breeders' Cup Day. Watch the show and then take advantage of all of these promotions. And I'll tell you what, the one that really jumps out is the Knockout Challenge, where the winner will be receiving a $1,000 win, place, or show bet on the Breeders' Cup Classic. David, that's not too shabby.
Really?
$1,000 to win on what figures to be a wide open, contentious field. So those are the promotions on Breeders' Cup Day. To get you prepared for Breeders' Cup Day, there's a couple of seminars next Sunday, a week from tomorrow. Sunday, October 24th, beginning at 4 p.m., the National Museum of Racing will present Countdown to the Breeders' Cup. Now, folks, this is free and open to the public. You do not have to be a member of the museum. We'll have a panel discussion. We'll show key pieces of video, and there will be a lengthy question and answer segment. It will be hosted by Mike Kane, my colleague at the Gazette newspapers, and the panelists will be, and I listed this by, the first one there is the elder statesman, which is a classy way of saying the oldest, is Matt Graves of the Albany Times-Union.
I think he'll be your first caller today.
Yeah, I can't wait to see Matt, on the 24th. Kyle Brownell from the Post-Star, who enjoyed an outstanding Saratoga season, as well as yours truly, and we look forward to seeing you a week from tomorrow, beginning at 4 o'clock at the museum on Union Avenue in Saratoga Springs. For additional information, you can call Mr. Richard Hamilton at 584-0400, extension 107. And Capital OTB will be having a Breeders' Cup seminar hosted by Gene Wood. It will be Thursday, October 28th at the Albany Teletheater beginning at 6:30. And Gene will be joined by Dick Powell, Anthony Mormino, and Seth Merrow. So fill in your social calendars. It's going to be busy over the next couple of weeks. All right, time to get to Breeders' Cup news, and unfortunately news of more defections from the Breeders' Cup, including the probable favorite for the sprint. This is Pico Central, easily winning the Vosburg. He would have had to be supplemented for $200,000 to the sprint. Owner Gary Tanaka and trainer Paulo Lobo, David, they just didn't think it made financial sense.
I think if this were next year and the Breeders' Cup was being run at Belmont, Pico Central would be hands down, a no-brainer to be supplemented. Gary Tanaka is a pretty sporting owner. But I guess he just didn't see the upside of, going to Lone Star, which is neutral ground for everybody, and who knows how he's going to handle it. And, unless he really stubs his toe in the Cigar Mile next month, winning the Vosburg, the Met Mile, and the Carter, and the San Carlos, I think he's already got the sprint title locked up.
Well, he's probably, I would agree that he's a substantial leader of the division right now. My only concern is, many of the voters weigh the Breeders' Cup, and the Breeders' Cup should be weighed heavily. It's the greatest single day of racing we have in this country. But a lot of people put an incredible amount of credence strictly on the Breeders' Cup. So if a horse like Speightstown or another legitimate sprinter were to win the Breeders' Cup sprint, and then Pico Central stubs his toe in the Cigar Mile, then we might have a contest.
Yeah, I could see a scenario where Keela wins the sprint from off the pace. Now, Keela met Pico Central once at Del Mar and beat him in the O'Brien.
That's right.
So, and Keela's already won at Lone Star. So, if he were to blow out the sprint by 5 or 6 lengths and set a track record or something like that, you could probably make a case for Keela.
That's right. And 2 defections from the Breeders' Cup Classic, beginning with Bago, shown here, rallying to win the Arc de Triomphe. Bago, a wonderful son of Najwan, who has won 7 of 9 career starts. He'll remain in training, but they're going to pass on the Classic. And Dave, they had the Classic really penciled in for several months, so this is a real surprise.
Yeah, I think, most Europeans, what they know of Texas has to do with watching Clint Eastwood movies and, Gunsmoke. So I'm sure they envision, the stagecoach picking them up at the airport and bringing them to the local saloon for the press conference. You're probably going to see a pretty light foreign contingent this year. I think the lowest they've ever had in foreign trained horses at a Cup is 9, a couple of times out in California. And, if this were Belmont next year, again, much more hospitable to the European style of racing.
Yeah, and it's also not easy to get to Dallas-Fort Worth with international flights. So, as Dave mentioned, chances are the number of Europeans participating this year will be down. And one local horse who will not be participating in the Breeders' Cup Classic is St. Liam, who was a bang-up second behind a Go Zapper in the Woodward, and Rick Dutrow said he's just not right.
Yeah, he said he wasn't himself for 3 or 4 days. They pre-enter Monday. I would expect he'd probably be pre-entered just to give
You think
him,
so?
yeah, just to give him another week or so to, see what's going on. I know he really doesn't want to run in the race, but, ultimately it's the owner's decision, but he would like to go in the Cigar Mile.
And news about a locally owned filly, Lucifer Stone. She will be forced to miss this afternoon's QE2. She is fourth on the inside in the Gold Cap, winning the Garden City. She's owned by Solaris Racing, and the managing partner of Solaris One, John Ball, sent me an email last night. Lucifer Stone has an inflamed left ankle. She's likely to require surgery to remove a small chip from her left front ankle. They, meaning the partners of Solaris One, have an option to sell her as a racing broodmare prospect come November in Keeneland. And right now, that's the slight favorite as far as what's going to happen with Lucifer Stone. But they bought her for about $150,000, if I remember correctly, and she's a nice one. She's earned over $400,000.
Sure, she got that Grade 1 title in the Garden State, and the only upside to keeping her in training next year would be the Breeders' Cup again, is at Belmont.
That's
and
right.
She does love the Belmont turf.
Now, the last time we showed a race on Down the Stretch from Philadelphia Park, it was the Pennsylvania Nursery. And it featured a then unknown colt named Smarty Jones. Well, let's go back to Philadelphia for a 2-year-old allowance race. And in front is Rockport Harbor for John Service, who did a pretty fair job with Smarty Jones. Rockport Harbor is a son of Unbridled Song, and he's going to win off here by 7.5 lengths, covering the 6.5 furlongs in 1:17 under Stuart Elliott. As Yogi used to say, is this going to be deja vu all over again for John Service?
Well, it looks like it based on the first 2 races. Rockport Harbor was a poorly kept secret first time out. He went off at 3-10 in the 10-horse field. But similarities with Smart Jones, his breeding was, it was a Pennsylvania bred kind of from out of left field. Rockport Harbor was bought at the Keeneland sales last year for almost $500,000, and he's by Unbridled Song, a very high-profile stallion. And the owners here of Fox Hill Farm have had a number of stakes winners for Service, and this is a pretty major league operation.
Yeah, it really is. They had, oh my goodness, the Mother Goose and Alabama winner that Service had, if I'm not mistaken.
Jostle,
yes. Jostle.
Loose on the lead.
But it looks like the Nashua may be next for Rockport Harbor. I mentioned he ran 6.5 and 117 flat. 1 race later, 3-year-old allowance horses went the same 6.5 furlongs in 18 and 2. Track couldn't have changed that much in a half an hour, so that's a legitimate time,
Absolutely.
17 flat.
And the pace was strong there, too. I think the half was about the same as the allowance race, and they picked it up in the third quarter. I don't know what kind of buyer he got for that race, but it has to be pretty good.
So Mr. Service looks like he has another exciting 2-year-old. All right, we are up to our first break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch with guest co-host Dave Litvin. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Dave and I return, we will get into our major stakes review. We will also have the first 2 of our 4 interviews this morning, those with Patrick Niancone and Julio Canani. As we go to this break, last Monday in New York, they ran the Pebbles for fillies, where number 3 Venturi was the favorite. But number 8 Fortunate Damsel appeared to be the lone speed, and there was some sentiment or sentimental value here as far as Fortunate Damsel and her new trainer.
Right. Heriberto Ocala-Sedano had been a longtime assistant for P.G. Johnson, and went on an 0 for 20 or so streak to start his training career. But if you're going to get your first win, it might as well be integrated stakes.
That's right. So we'll take a look at the Pebbles going to the break, and Dave and I will be back with our major stakes recap right after these messages.
Fortunate Damsel takes the field through an easy first quarter there, 25 3/5 seconds, so the pace is slow to develop, with Fortunate Damsel in front, Delta Sensation alongside second. And then on the far outside, Sabalina, Jorge Chavez, sensing the slow pace, has sent Sabalina from last up to third. The half goes in a pokey 15 2/5 seconds. Sabalina has passed all but one Fortunate Damsel with a blitz down the backstretch. Fortunate Damsel digging down, and Sabalina is now second on the outside. Delta Sensation third, Serendipitous is fourth. Right this way, going in the wrong direction. Alongside her, it's Venturi, and farther back go Robin, and the trailer is Lena Treese, and the field turns for home. Fortunate Damsel cuts the corner, trying to do it all the way on the lead. Sabelina there on the outside. Out to sensation down to the rail. Venturi's beating horses. Oh, Robin on the far outside, coming late. 100 yards from home. Fortunate Damsel trying to gut it out another 100 yards. Here comes Venturi with a flying finish. It's a photo that goes to Fortunate Damsel. Venturi flying at the end, a three-way photo for third among Go, Robin, right this way in destination.
Hello, this is Jim Bond. You're watching Down the Stretch on the Off Track Betting Network.
Slugall in between them, those three in a dramatic finish.
Tis now wins it for America!
It's going to be a three-horse photo finish to the turn. Here's the wire.
The Breeders' Cup World Thoroughbred Championships. 8 races, 8 world champions. One unforgettable day.
This year, many thoroughbreds, no longer able to compete, will join the ranks of racing's homeless. The Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation and its supporters have been providing help and hope, creating opportunities where once there were none. The TRF, together with the racing industry, is meeting the challenge, taking care of their own. With your help, we can continue our saving mission, ensuring many more horses the welcome home they so richly deserve.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Guest co-host Dave Litfin from Daily Racing Forum to my left. I'm Mark Cassano, and you just watched Fortunate Damsel for Heriberto Ocala Cedeno win his first race, and that's nice to see. Javier Castellano controlled the pace. She wins over Venturi. I mentioned to Dave before we came up to the studio, it seems to me this fall in New York, and maybe it seems to me to be this way because I need horses to come from off the pace on grass, but it seems we've had an incredibly large number of races with lone speed.
Yes, and even in the high-class events where normally you'd see a fast contested pace, that hasn't been the case. There's been a lot of stakes and high-class allowance races won by horses either on the lead or sitting second off a very slow pace.
Well, that's a perfect segue into our first race because you talk about controlling the pace. We're going to begin with a Beldame, and it marked the final career start of number 1 Sightseek. Now, unbeaten, I mean, they haven't even come close to beating her in 5 prior tries at Belmont Park. And those given the best chance of an upset in here, number 6, Storm Flag Flying, and number 5, the 3-year-old Society Selection, who seemed to blossom for Alan Jerkins at Saratoga. But ladies and gentlemen, after an opening quarter in 24 and change and a half in 48 and 2, David, it was over. Nobody had any chance. I mean, I think Tom Durkin's call was 24 and 4, well within her scope. That's well within the scope of 12,000 claimers. Sightseek is long gone here. They had no chance. But what are your thoughts on the efforts of Storm Flag Flying, who had to chase, and that's not her normal running style, and Society Selection, considering the pace was so dead?
I'm not so sure about Society Selection. I really think she ran her heart out twice at Saratoga. And Alan Jerkins' barn is not the best shipping into a place other than Gulfstream, and maybe Delaware Park. I can't recall him winning a major race out in California or the Midwest or anything like that. Storm Flag Flying, though, she's pretty interesting. She is 3 for 4 around 2 turns, and she's going to get back to that situation in distaff. But more importantly, as you said, she needs a good pace situation. She needs to be in a race where she doesn't have to expend herself too early. She needs to relax in much the same way she did in the Personal Lens and let a couple other fillies go at it through fast fractions. If she gets that kind of setup, she's got a formidable stretch kick, but not when Sightseek can go almost 25 for the first quarter.
No, I mean, that's obviously absurd for this type of horse. But when you looked at the setup of the race, Board Eligible had no speed, Nevermore had no speed, and neither Society Selection nor Storm Flag Flying wants to be anywhere near the pace. So the race did set up the way it looked on paper, and Sightseek is such a high-quality mare, they just had no chance.
No, especially at Belmont, her favorite track, where she's never been seriously tested.
So she is now retired, having won 12 of 20 starts, including 7 Grade 1s and $2.45 million. We found out that Bobby Frankel was battling some ankle problems with her since the summertime. If the Breeders' Cup were held at Belmont this year, they might have taken one more shot, but there's, obviously no shot being at Lone Star Park.
Absolutely not.
So out of this race, first of all, Jerry Bailey will come back and ride Storm Flag Flying. John Velasquez will go to a shadow. Do you think the pace setup, or the likely pace setup in the distaff, will benefit Storm Flag Flying more than Society Selection?
I think a lot of it depends on the post position draw. Lone Star is a 1 mile track, similar to Santa Anita. The stretch there is only 930 feet, which is about 300 feet shorter than Churchill.
Right.
So
right.
It's really important to get some, position into the far turn. That's going to work against a filly like Storm Flag Flying there, I think. But if they go, 109 and change for the 3/4, then she's got a shot as long as she doesn't get strung out too wide.
The other major prep for the Breeders' Cup Distaff, and this is actually over the 20 years of the Breeders' Cup, may be the finest prep for any Breeders' Cup race. We're going to go to Keeneland for the Spinster. And pay attention to number 1, This Is a Zeri. Beaten in the personal ensign last when she chased a very, very fast pace. Here, watch her rate much more kindly behind Tam Well, who ran second in the Arlington Matron. She's a pretty nice filly in good form. But I think what Wayne Lucas and Pat Day like the most from this performance from Azeri is the way she settled and rated behind a 46 4.5 and 3/4 and 11. And under just moderate urging from Day, he just tapped her once in the stretch. David, this looked to me to be an ideal final prep.
Yeah, there had to be a question in your mind after the personal ends, and that was a real retching effort at 10 furlongs. In hot, humid weather at Saratoga, and, it was her 22nd lifetime start, and she's 6 years old, and you have to wonder, well, maybe that knocked her out. But at least from the Spinster, from what we see here, she's back to her old self, and if anything, she's rating a little more kindly.
Well, let's remember that going into the personal ensign at Saratoga, Lucas had taken her to Oklahoma and worked her 3/4 of a mile in 1:11.3, which to longtime followers of Oklahoma, that may have been the fastest workout ever at 3/4 of a mile at Oklahoma. Now, why would a filly who's already run 20 times need a workout like that? And she didn't rate at all in a personal ensign. But here, I thought she rated absolutely beautifully. And again, she's not beating the greatest field ever assembled, but Tam Will is a nice filly who's in top form. Now the big question is, does Azeri go to the Breeders' Cup for the Distaff or the Classic?
I hope it's the Distaff. I'd hate to see her go out in the Classic getting hot and dirty and finishing about 12 lengths up the track.
You think that the boys would be that tough on her?
Yeah, I don't think she's a match for the boys.
But as far as the Distaff goes, she's got to be the likely favorite.
Right, you're going to be talking about 4 to 5 even money in the Distaff and about 15, 20 to 1 if you go in the Classic. So, they've tried the boys this year. They've tried sprints. They've tried to expand her horizons a little bit. This is probably the last race of her career. Let her go out like the champion she is.
I've been saying all along, in fact, I said when we thought she was retired by Laura Desaru and Michael Paulson, that she's a Hall of Fame mare.
Oh, absolutely. She's closing in on $4 million in earnings, which is unheard of for a filly or mare. And, there's something to be said now for horses that hold their form through several campaigns and don't just disappear after 8 or 9 races, and that's the end of them.
Well, Mr. Lucas said he is leaning to the Distaff. He will allow Michael Paulson, the owner, to make that decision, and I concur. I certainly hope they choose the Distaff because that's where she belongs. All right. The next race we're going to preview is the Juvenile Fillies, and we begin our preview of the Juvenile Fillies with the first of 4 interviews this morning. Patrick Niancone has Sense of Style, who until her stunning 5th in the Alcibiades, where she completely lacked room for the last half mile, she was destined to be the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies.
Absolutely, but it's very tricky when you're evaluating 2-year-olds off their summer form, and then you get into the fall, and especially late fall, where there's a lot of growth spurts going on. There's a lot of horses with breeding that's, long distance potential, and, now's the time where things start catching up and evening out, and you're on thin ice sometimes when you go off a race in July and expect that that's going to be good enough to beat a different set of fillies in October.
Well, we put my colleague Mike Veach to work. He came down yesterday and chatted about Sense of Style with her trainer, Mr. Patrick Niancone.
Patrick, first things first about Sense of Style. Did she come out of the Alcibiades in good order?
Yeah, she come out very well. She had not really run, and she come out great. Very happy with her. Yeah.
Patrick, I seem to recall that after the matron, you said to us that perhaps you would not have her as sharp for the Alcibiades, but rather have her sharper for the Breeders' Cup. Did that come into play in her performance last week?
No, what's come on the play last week, it's, she never have any room to move out, and she's, I bring her here to have some experience of two-turn. I think we have done right because, she takes the beat in the first turn like a lot of two-year-old do the first time they run two turns. They think the turn is coming, they need to go. Mm-hmm. But I think with this experience would be very good for her, and after that, everything has been great. Good experience, good race, taking some sun, with a crowded field. And it was, only thing was not great was the result, but I mean, what can we do? She was boxed in,
That brings me to my next question, Patrick. Early in the race, Edgar, in the Alcibiades, Edgar guided her to the inside and saved lots of ground. Were you happy with the way she was moving down the backstretch at that point? Were you satisfied then?
Oh yeah, she was well. Only problem is we can see from her lungs, and she would need a miracle to come out, But I said to Edgar that in any case, I don't want she have a hard race, and he have taken the choice to play for luck, and the luck was not with us this weekend,
Patrick, from Sense of Style's maiden victory to the matron, she had 3 races in 50 days, and then after the matron, you mentioned the possibility of maybe just training up to the Breeders' Cup. Do you have any regrets about running her at Keeneland in the Alcibiades?
No, no, not at all. The reverse. I mean, I'm happy. She had a good public gallop. She have not had a hard race, and I mean, to be honest with you, if I'm happy about what I've done, I would be happy if she win the Breeders' Cup. Now, if she don't win the Breeders' Cup, I don't know, but I have to reconsider with another one next year.
We can worry about second-guessing that. In the spin-away, Sense of Style showed some good early speed, and she stayed right on top of the pace. Will you maybe encourage Edgar to do something similar to that if it's a real crowded field in the Breeders' Cup?
We will see at the time. It's difficult to plan so early before because we need to do the draw, you need to see everything. But, listen, what we have done, it's, with the exception of a first race where it was a bit of competition and a few runners, there was 9. I mean, she have only run 5 or 6 runner race, and I think he would be in a Breeders' Cup plenty runners, but it was a reason, the motivation to come over here, and she got a good education, what we was looking for, and the only thing, like I can only repeat to you, the only thing was not as nice, it's she had not win, that's all. But, you need to sometime to know how to lose one to win a bigger one,
Oh, understood. Patrick, I think it might be fair to say that on the West Coast, there's a very good filly named Sweet Catamine, and I think even in spite of the less than happy result in the Alcibiades, a lot of people would call you as having maybe one of the top 2 or maybe the leading filly on the East Coast. Did you see Sweet Catamine's race, and if you did, what do you think of her?
Yeah, she seems to be very good, but we'll see, hopefully everybody comes sound for the big one, and hopefully both horses, both fillies, and the other one got a go and clean run, and me, I wish all the time the best horse win, and hopefully we have the best. I'm not sure about that.
I do know that about you, Patrick. And finally, with Sense of Style, what are your plans for going to Texas? When will you leave Kentucky and go to Lone Star Park with her?
She's leaving on Monday. Monday we'll be there.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Michael. And Michael will be back with Patrick Niancone later on in the show to talk about his entrant for the Breeders' Cup Turf Magistretti. The one prep last weekend for the juvenile fillies was here in New York at Belmont Park. It was the Frisette. Pay attention to the inside and the outside posts. Number 1 is the favorite Boleto, coming off a solid second behind Sense of Style in the matron. Number 8 is Reddy's Gal from the dangerous Todd Pletcher. 2 for 2 at Saratoga and stretching out from a perfect post position. But early on it would be Sis City, who, David, I thought was life and death in one of the worst maiden races run at Saratoga. I mean, It was absolutely dreadful. But she was claimed by Rick Dutrow. He took her to Monmouth. She won a stakes by a pole. And here, she's going to make the favorite in the second choice run hard. But in the end, it would be Boleto to get up over Reddy's Gale. Your thoughts on the first set?
Well, just according to the pace scenario, based on what they ran the Champagne in a race later, the fractions here were really sizzling. 46-28 to the half and 3/4 in 110 and change. They went the 3/4 in the Champagne and 111-2. The effort takes its toll on the stretch as you'll see City start weaving around like a drunken sailor along about the 16th hole. And that gives Boleto, time to get in gear. Boleto's she's got classic distance breeding, and she's a big, long striding filly who really well suited to Belmont. And she looks like she's going to develop into a genuine stare, but she's still a little rough around the edges. You saw she broke slowly from the rail. And you'll see Ryder kind of has to muscle her around to get her to change lead right about next couple of strides or so. And when she does that, she kind of re-spurts on the inside, and she can catch City. But she got a perfect pace scenario here. Again, the Lone Star stretch is much shorter than the tracks in New York, and she's going to be, in a tough scenario. They're probably at a short price. Red's Gal went very well for second. Usually, a stalking trip 4 wide at Belmont is okay, but with the fractions that fast and it being her first time going long, it was a difficult assignment.
She ran well. Both fillies ran well. Boleto for Tommy Albertrani that day was ridden by Corey Nakatani, but Mr. Nakatani will be riding Sweet Catamine in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Don't be surprised to see Jerry Bailey on Boleto in the Juvenile Fillies. He rides for Darley, rides for Tom Albertrani. Boleto became the first horse ever bred in the United Arab Emirates to win a Grade 1 race in the United States. Congratulations to Tommy Albertrani. Now, I just mentioned Sweet Catamine and the fact that Corey Nakatani would be taking her in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. She is trained by Julio Canani, and she is the star of the 2-year-old fillies out west. And earlier, I had a chance to sit down and chat with the trainer of Sweet Catamine, Mr. Julio Canani. Julio, after being beaten in her debut versus maidens at 5.5 furlongs, Sweet Catamine has come back with 2 outstanding stakes victories. Talk about your wonderful filly, if you would, please.
Well, the first time they ran him, it was in Del Mar, and she was very green. It was on a 5.5 furlongs. And she's a big strut filly, that she wasn't quite ready to run, but I need to start him in some place. And she broke a little sluggish, but she ran a nice race. She finished second. She was running, in the end, just what we want, And I think, she ran pretty good the first time that she ran,
Julio, you just referred to her as a strapping filly. Could you talk to our audience about, from a physical standpoint, as well as a mental standpoint, what makes Sweet Catamine so very special?
Well, she's big. Okay, she looked like a 3-year-old, that filly, though. That's why, in the beginning, I wasn't, too tempted to run, that early, as a 2-year-old, but this is a filly that she was training good, without asking him to work fast, she was doing things on her own. And she was, in the first race that she ran, she was very immature, though. Even the second time when I ran him in that debutante at Del Mar, the 7/8, when she broke a little slow and she broke sideways, like she stumbled a little bit leaving the gate, and she overcame those things and everything, and she gave me a good run, in the end of the race. It was a track that wasn't that fast, but I was very, very impressed, when she won the debutante at Del Mar. And then after the race, she lost some weight because she got a lot of baby fat, this filly, though,
Well,
she looks very light, and not very light. She looks just like the right. She looks super now, though.
Well, Julio, in her last race here in the Oak Leaf Stakes, despite a tough outside post position, she was visually very, very impressive. Please talk to our audience about this magnificent performance in the Oak Leaf.
After the debutante, she really trained good, this filly, though. In fact, I just was watching, her schedule, for the Breeders' Cup, what she did before, she ran the Oak Leaf. And she worked 3/4 in 111, broke the race, you know. I mean, she really, really, improved a lot, this filly, after the 7/8. And how can I explain to you? I mean, she was why? I mean, it's because she broke on the outside, you know. And she's a filly, a big filly that actually you don't want to get any dirt in the face or things like that. You know what I mean? You just keep it out of trouble. And when Canani asking him for the right question, that filly just took off, though.
Now, Julio, you just talked about her being such a big filly, and you really don't want her to get caught behind other fillies. She's so big. What do you do in a big field in juvenile fillies?
Not exactly that you want to be, but why you want to, you understand. And it's another filly that in the oak leaf that she really went out farther than me. That was a filly on Neo Dressel. You know what I mean?
Right, yes.
The race, they come back in that way, but this filly really, really acts, mentally, she's like an older filly, and they say the stone calves are a little bit, exciting, I think, but she got an unbelievable personality, this filly, though. I don't worry about it. If it's a big field, it's a big field. Well, we can do nothing about it. But I don't think there's going to be any problem for her. She's really, really a nice filly, and she's maturing very quickly. She looks like an older filly, though, you know. They got a lot of experience.
Julio, how did she come out of the oak leaf? I know she worked the other day.
She worked yesterday.
And how did she go?
They're giving him 48 breezing. Actually, she was galloping. She's really doing unbelievable, though. This is a filly that after she runs, she never leaves. She cleans out his feet up. My God, she never left a meal, this filly, though. She really is doing great.
Julio, I know at this point she's only been between St. Anita and Del Mar, but do you have any worries about shipping her to Texas?
Well, if we're going to be worrying about those things, we better not go.
That's right.
You understand what I'm saying? When they discovered an American, they just took off, you know. Thinking, is you going to find land or not?
Julio, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. What do you realistically expect from Sweet Catamine in the juvenile fillies?
Listen, I won't change places with anybody. Let's put them in that way. Okay, I won't change places with anybody. I used to train her mother, and it's a big difference body-wise between her mother and her. Her mother was a very light filly, but she was a nice filly, though. She was a Group 1 filly, and believe me, I won't change places with nobody. The best horses, they get beat sometimes. Even Secretary got beat, but this is a nice filly, and I won't change places with anybody. She's doing super. She got a great personality. And when I shipped from here to Del Mar, I never got any problems. Or from Hollywood to Del Mar, I know that she's got to take a plane and things like that, but everybody is in the same boat, you know.
That's right. Well, Julio, you've got the finest filly in the West. Back here in the East, in spite of the fact she got beat in the Alcibiades, most of us feel Sense of Style from Patrick Niancone is the best in the East. Any thoughts about Sense of Style?
She's a nice filly. She's a very, very nice filly, though.
But you wouldn't trade places with anybody.
I don't think so.
Well, Julio...
I don't want to sound cocky or nothing. I just want it, you know. My filly's doing super, though. I hope she stays in the same frame of mind and everything that she's doing now. She's very happy. She's training good. And that's what you're expecting, going to big races, you know.
Julio Canani, ladies and gentlemen. A great sense of humor. And I'll tell you what, not a high-profile trainer, but David, what he's accomplished over the years, he is an outstanding horseman.
Right. A la Charlie Whittingham, he brought Special Ring off a layoff since last fall and won the Eddie Reed wire to wire from post 9. So anybody who can do something like that in a major Grade 1 race, you have to give him all the credit in the world. And
Julio will rejoin us a little bit later on to talk about his 2 possible starters for the Breeders' Cup Mile. But we are up to our next break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Dave and I return, much more action. We'll take a look at the stakes leading up to the Breeders' Cup Mile and the Breeders' Cup Turf. So finally, we're going to move to the proper surface. And we'll begin by taking a look at the WinStar Galaxy going to the break from Keeneland. This a possible prep for the filly and mare turf, although it doesn't appear we're going to get much, if anything, out of here. Pay attention to number 5, Stay Forever. She's in the full white blinkers toward the back of the pack. She races awfully well in here, and they may decide to run her in 2 weeks. So we'll take a look at the WinStar Galaxy going to the break. Dave and I will be back with much, much more right after these messages.
Shakanaj and Jasira, the top two separated by a half length. Super Brand is a wide third, a length and a half off the lead. Dimitrova, the millionaire, looks toward the inside from fourth as they turn for home. Top of the stretch, Shakanaj leads it. Dimitrova dives toward the rail. Jasira and Super Brand toward the far outside. Coming past the eighth pole of the WinStar Galaxy, Stay Forever's coming down the center of the course. Here's Dimitrova up the inside. Stay Forever far outside. Shakanaj is still there. Super Brand is there. Dimitrova, Shakanaj now. Here comes Super Brand along with Stay Forever, who finally pulls it out by a half length. Super Brand had to settle for second. 1 minute 57 seconds flat.
Hello, I'm Mary Lou Whitney, and you're watching OTB in Saratoga Springs, one of my favorite places to be in the world.
nybreads.com, the online home of North America's best incentive program. The latest news, updated throughout the day, plus streaming video of New York bred stakes winners. Check out the New York bred leaderboards for jockeys, trainers, owners, and breeders. Want to become an owner or breeder? Well, the New York Thoroughbred Breeders section tells you about upcoming owner seminars and farm tours. You'll even find an online sales section with horses you can purchase right now. There's a directory of New York State farms, a stallion registry, plus up-to-date sales information complete with hip numbers and pedigree pages. Thinking of breeding your mare? First, go to nybreads.com and run a hypothetical mating with any registered New York-based stallion. And finally, at nybreads.com, you'll see why the New York Breeding Racing Program is North America's best, with over $40 million a year in purses, incentives, and awards. So get with the program at nybreads.com.
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Guest co-host Dave Litvin of Daily Racing Form. To my left, I'm Mark Asano. You just saw a nice effort from Stay Forever. Whether she goes to the filly and mare turf at 1 3/8 is questionable. Early in her career, she ran 3 turns at Gulfstream, and she didn't like the 3-turn configuration too terribly well.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest payday of her career, I think. And, you know, she's 7 years old, soon to be 8. And, you know, she's going to be facing a lot of younger tigers in a race like the filly and mare turf.
All right, news about the Breeders' Cup Mile, and the news that Artie Schiller, shown here en route to, well, a 1:45.2 mile and an eighth in the Jamaica, will be going to the Breeders' Cup Mile for Jimmy Jerkins and Richard Migliore. David, all year long I've been waiting for the 3-year-olds to face their elders on grass. So far, those that have done that have done awfully well, and he could be a major factor in the mile.
Yeah, it's unusual to have the 2 of the best grass horses in the country, 3-year-olds, and Kitten's Joy and Artie Schiller. The only time Artie Schiller lost this year was to Kitten's Joy, but I'm still not convinced he's not as good as Kitten's Joy. That race was kind of unusual. He was 16 lengths back. It was 1.25 miles at Colonial Downs, which was kind of no man's land.
Right.
And he's just not usually that far back, and he made a big long run to make up 15.5 lengths, and then he just kind of finished evenly, and Kitten's Joy got him. I'd like to see them run again, but it's probably going to have to wait till next year because they're going to go in the mile, and Kitten's Joy, of course, is going in the turf.
And earlier this fall when I interviewed Dale Romans, and it was before the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, I asked Dale, was the Secretariat at Arlington Kitten's Joy's best race? And he said, no, I think when we beat Artie Schiller was his best race. So he thinks very highly of Artie Schiller as well.
Artie Schiller, I remember watching him as a 2-year-old at Belmont last September when he won a mile. And again, he was 11th early after a half mile, I think. He put in an unbelievable run to catch Timo, who's no slouch himself, a multiple stakes winner.
Yeah.
And if you saw that move, you said, my God. And then he came back at Aqueduct. I'm kind of an Artie Schiller fan because then his first start of the year was at Aqueduct in an allowance race. I think it was a non-winners at 2 or something.
Yeah.
It was against Oler, but it was just a 6-horse nondescript field, and he was 3-1. And, you know, he was very good to me.
He's been good to a lot of people. I know Richard Migliore thrilled that they're going to the Breeders' Cup Mile. All right, let's take a look at the prep races leading up to the Breeders' Cup Mile. On last week's show, I talked to you folks about Nothing to Lose in the Shadwell Turf Mile. And I said I felt Nothing to Lose was the best horse in the race. And I was absolutely right. I also said this might be a good time to try to beat him. And I was absolutely wrong. At the top of your screen, third from last in the red and white silks is Nothing to Lose. The reason I said it might be a good time to try to beat him, he drew the worst post position, and he went from John Velasquez to Robbie Alvarado. And all he did was run, arguably, the finest race of his career. Dave, he's going to draw off for a 4.5 length win, and this was a big effort.
Especially considering the wide run on the far turn. That's very tough. And also keep in mind, he was picking up 9 pounds off the 4-star Dave, where he kind of got through on the hedge and saved all the ground. This time he's breaking from the extreme outside post. He hasn't run since late August. He's caught 4 wide around the turn. And you get 9-2. I guess the combination of those factors threw a lot of people off the scent.
And Robbie Alvarado did do a nice job, and I wasn't being critical of Alvarado, but when you go from Velasquez, in my opinion, one of the 3 best grass riders in North America, to Robbie Alvarado, it's a minus. Plus, as Dave mentioned, he won the 4-star Dave saving ground. How are you going to save ground from post 9 at Keeneland going a mile? That was a big, big effort. And owner Ken Ramsey is in a wonderful spot heading into Breeders' Cup 21. Here in New York, the final prep, possible final prep for the Breeders' Cup Mile was the Kelso. And fourth on the hedge, sitting a beautiful trip. I dream of trips like this under Abar is number 1, Mr. O'Brien. Dismal in last, but that was an off-the-turfer. You just throw it out. Here, a perfect trip. He's going to rally for a 1.5 length score over Millennium Dragon and Gulch Approval. David, this wasn't the greatest Kelso field ever assembled, but this was a good, solid performance.
And this horse is capable of some very fast efforts. I think he got a bear of 108 for the Kelso. Nothing to Lose got a 110, so that's a negligible difference. Mr. O'Brien set a course record, I believe, in the mile and 1/8 Dixie at Pimlico on Preakness Day earlier this year. He showed little in an off-the-turf race in his prior start when he was 2-5 for some reason on the dirt. But back on turf here, I think they have to think about supplementing.
You know, it's a serious amount of money, but trainer Robin Graham and the owners will discuss it. Last half mile in 46-3, last quarter in 23-2. But Abar Koa put up an absolutely perfect ride. Final prep for the Breeders' Cup Mile occurred in Southern California at Santa Anita, and it was the running of the Oak Tree Mile. And third at the top of your screen is the eventual winner, the Philly Musical Chimes. Watch what DeSormo does coming to the turn. He's going to look outside of him. He's going to fan Singletary wide on the turn right now. Then he's going to drop in to pin, I believe it's Sigan, in behind horses. Just a normal Kent DeSormo ride, riding 3 or 4 of them. But this filly ran very, very gamely to prevail over Buckland Manor and Singletary. But Neil Drysdale's got a difficult decision because the filly and mare turf is a 1 3/8 this year. He doesn't think she can go a 1 3/8, so she may very well come back and face the boys again in the Breeders' Cup Mile.
She might as well. It's not like it hasn't been done before. Yeah. We've seen fillies win this race all the time, including last year.
One of the horses, and by the way, the last half mile of the Oak Tree Mile, 46-2 in the last quarter in 23-3. But as per normal, Mr. DeSormo riding several horses in the race, and he did a very, very good job. One of the horses that did not run in the Oak Tree Mile was Special Ring, and he is trained by Mr. Julio Canani, who has had success in the Oak Tree Mile in past years. Julio Canani has also had great success in the Breeders' Cup Mile. Ladies and gentlemen, he won 2 of the last 5 renewals of the Breeders' Cup Mile. He won with Silic at Gulfstream in 1999 from a horrible post position, and he won the 2001 edition of the Breeders' Cup Mile with Val Royal. Well, this year, Julio hopes to have 2 entrants for the Breeders' Cup Mile in Special Ring and Black Dune, and earlier, I had a chance to chat with him about his Breeders' Cup Mile starters. Julio, let's begin with the Special Ring, 8th in last year's Breeders' Cup Mile, and he started only once since, right here in the Eddie Reed. Why has he only run once in the last year?
See, last year after the Breeders' Cup, he came out with an elbow problem. He pulled up a muscle, a little bit, after the race, and we stopped on it. We sent him into the farm, and I trained him straight to the Eddie Reed. This is a horse that how can I put it to you? Get a good performance out of this horse, you got to give it in time. And I want to tell you something, his training, unbelievable though. unbelievable his training, this horse, though. I mean, and he's a 7-year-old, you know. I could have run him in the Oak Tree Mile. I mean, that horse going to be 3 to 5, but I didn't want to run him. And I talked to the owner and I said, listen, he's training so good that they just go straight into the race. You know, I mean, he worked the other day 3 quarters and 11, gallop out 7, 8, and 24. Yesterday he breathed a minute, but he did it like he was, I mean, in an open gallop, though. He really is doing good, this horse, though. I hope he stays like that for another 20 days.
Julio, his most recent victories have come wire to wire. Does Special Ring need to be in front in order to show his best?
Well, it all depends, I mean, how the race come out. This horse broke the track record 2 years ago, lane 4. He broke the track record, I mean, in Del Mar. He ran 1:32, I think. But everything is this is a funny horse, though. You know, you have to keep it off the rail. I mean, yes, but he has so much ability, though. You know, it's just one of those cases that he is on a special ring.
Julio, we know at Lone Star, the turf course being about 7/8 of a mile, some pretty tight turns. Your thoughts about Special Ring over a tight turf course like Lone Star?
Well, I think Del Mar got tight turns.
Yeah.
I think the Del Mar got a tight turn, though. You
so
know?
That's no concern for you?
No, even if he don't got a tight turns or white turns, we don't got another choice.
That's right.
That's it. So. If we listen, sometimes if we're going to be thinking on those things, we better not go.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's
Everybody's
right.
in the same boat.
And Julio, you've also got a wonderful 3-year-old named Black Dune who is undefeated in 3 starts here in the United States against his own age group. He, unlike Special Ring, he comes from far, far back. Talk to our audience about Black Dune, if you would, please.
Well, Black Dune is a horse that he really surprised me, though. He really surprised me. The first time I ran him, I didn't do too much with this horse. I mean, I trained him very light, and he was, I mean, just, you know, and I took a chance, I mean, in the Ocean side, and I told Nakatani, I said, I don't know how fit he is. I mean, I never asked him to run. I mean, he's been training very slow. I mean, he hasn't been here for a short time. And I said, if he gets tired, don't punish me or nothing. Just, and I put blinkers on him. Because when I was working in Hollywood Park, he used to look at the grandstand. So I put a little cheaters on him, not to put a speed or nothing, just to keep his head straight. So I told him, he gets tired, I mean, you don't punish him, you know, because we got, I mean, two more races for him in Del Mar. And this horse surprised me because in the middle of the turn, he just went to the lead and the wraps, I mean, under a hole. I mean, he made the lead and he finished under a hole and he ran 1:33. So after that race, I mean, I didn't do the same thing. I mean, and he got in trouble in the 16th pole, I mean, in La Jolla, and he overcome that, I mean, and he won in 2 jumps, you know.
And Julio, in his last start on September 6th, he came from San Diego to win the Del Mar Derby. How did he look in that race? How did he come out of it?
He wasn't in San Diego. He was in the border with Tijuana. It was a little farther, though.
But that's his running style, isn't it?
Well, no, I mean, I don't know. Listen, when you put a rider, I mean, on top of a horse, everything is out of your hands. I mean, I didn't expect this horse to be last, I mean, in the quarter pole, though, you know. And he went to traffic and everything. He's one of those horses that he quickens, I mean, I don't know. Listen, the best he ever worked was last Sunday. He was 3 quarters and 14, and he flew last quarter to a mile on his own. And I never worked this horse fast. I just let him do what he wants. And this morning, I mean, you would see this horse gallop. I mean, my God, I mean, that's the best day I see him moving. I mean, with a frame of mind that he got. I mean, so full of life, you know. I mean, I hope he stays like that for another 2 weeks.
Julio, you know what it takes to win the Breeders' Cup Mile. Let's face it. You won it with Silic in 1999 and with Val Royal in 2001. So be as perfectly blunt with our audience as you can be here. With Special Ring, 1 start coming into the Breeders' Cup, with Black Dune never having faced its elders. Now, granted, we don't know about post positions, Which of those horses has a better chance to win the Breeders' Cup Mile for you?
Well, in the beginning, let's start with this thing about post position. I won 2 Breeders' Cups for the number 12. And believe me, right after I called the races, they come and they ask me in Belmont Park. I mean, I say, you know, I mean, they were some people were complaining that they got 11 or the 10. And I said, listen, I won for the 12, and if I got the 14, I'm going to try to win them for the 14. I mean, if it's your day, it's your day. Your birthday is your birthday. You can change it if it's a Saturday or Monday. You understand what I'm saying? But sometimes we overcome on those things. If you got a good horse, I mean, you can overcome a little things, you know, like post positions or things like that. If we're going to get this thing bothered too much about post position, we are in trouble. We won't be able to bet $2 on.
Julio, do these horses have a legitimate chance in the Breeders' Cup Mile?
I think so. I think so. Special Ring is a very, very nice horse. So much talent got this horse, man. This horse drives me crazy if we can come from Europe. And Black Doom, I mean, he didn't do nothing wrong. He exploded the last part of the races. I know that he's a 3-year-old, but in another 2 months going to be 4. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, hey, this is the Super Bowl. And if you got something to go there, you got to go. If you don't got nothing to go there, you can't get in anyway. So, that's it.
Well, Julio, I want to thank you for having taken time out of your busy schedule to have joined us this morning on Down the Stretch. I want to offer you congratulations on a terrific Del Mar meet. That was absolutely outstanding. And I want to wish you all the best in 2 weeks in the Breeders' Cup at Lone Star. I hope the horses run well for you, and I hope they come out of the race as well.
Thank you.
Julio Canani, ladies and gentlemen, via telephone from California. I always enjoy chatting with Julio because I think not only is he an outstanding horseman, he's just got a great sense of humor, and he has a lot of fun doing what he's doing. And ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to the Breeders' Cup Mile, you had better pay attention to anything Julio Canani saddles, because, Dave, you know that when a trainer wins the Breeders' Cup Mile twice in just the last 5 years, he's pretty good at his trade.
Absolutely.
And this, as always, will likely be one of the, as far as value goes, and to us as handicappers, one of the most difficult races to decipher on Breeders' Cup Day.
Yes, I mean, sharp turns and probable full field. Try to envision the turns. The turf course is 7/8, which I believe is the same dimensions as Aqueduct. And
or the inner turf course at Saratoga.
Right, and if you've seen the turns there, they are hairpin. You know, the first turn can spell doom for half the field.
Okay, let's move on to the Breeders' Cup Turf, and the one prep race from last weekend we're going to take a look at is the Sycamore, and next to last on the fence at the top of your screen is the eventual winner, Mustanfar. Another 3-year-old facing his elders for the first time. Now, this is a pretty soft group, although Danon was coming back in here for Frankel. I liked Mustanfar in here, Dave, but I expected him to be forwardly placed. He kind of got shuffled early, but it didn't make any difference, because here he comes roaring on the outside. And Kieran McLaughlin has told us all year long that this horse wants to go a route of ground.
And this horse was targeted in races like the Bluegrass earlier this year. They put him on the turf at Belmont in June. He tried it once before at Gulfstream. I needed him in the second neck when he was closer to the pace, and he got nipped in the last stride by Prince Arch, who's a pretty nice horse himself. I think he's the one horse that's beaten Kitten's Joy on the turf.
That's right.
But let's face it, I mean, Mustanfar was beating Deputy Strike, who was running in $50,000 claimers at Saratoga.
Heck of a claim.
Yes. And Rochester, you know, Rochester's a nice, long-winded sort, but he's not usually associated with, you know, races like the Breeders' Cup Turf in any way, shape, or form. And Danon hadn't been out in a year. So.
Of course, it's Frankel. You know, and a year with Frankel is like right up his alley, but Danon did not run well. But so far, the 3-year-olds on grass who have had a chance to face their elders have done very, very well. That may bode especially well for horses like Black Dune and Artie Schiller come Breeders' Cup time. News from owner Ken Ramsey, who has made a decision on who will ride Kitten's Joy in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And it's a bit of an unusual one in the respect that Johnny Velasquez, who rode him to victory here in a 22-3 final quarter in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic, Johnny will retain the mount over Jerry Bailey. Jerry's a bit miffed by this because, let's face it, Dave, in the last 10 years, it's Bailey who replaces everybody else on horses. Here, he gets replaced on the probable favorite in a $2 million race.
Yeah, it's not like we're replacing him with, you know, some unknown rider. We're talking about Velasquez here, who shattered his own record at Saratoga this summer. A bad day for him now at Belmont is to only have 3 winners. I mean, you know, Kitten's Joy really surprised me a little in that race. I thought, you know, that the setup was much different than in the Secretariat, where the pace setters were 3-year-olds that went too fast early.
Right.
This race unfolded much more in the European sense, and I figured, well, Kitten's Joy, you know, here's where, you know, he runs into a horse like Magistretti and he gets a little bit of a reality check. Unbelievable the way he just kicked by that horse. I don't know how you take Velasquez off after a race like that.
Yeah, the reality check was that he's a pretty good 3-year-old. Yes. You know, I talked about this with the audience on the show last week. There was no portable rail up on the turf course at Belmont, so we have to assume the teletimer was accurate. Now, I know you hand time, I see you at Saratoga hand timing races. Do you do that at Belmont, and do you do it on a fractional basis or just the entire race?
I don't do it on a fractional basis. I do it from the gate, so
okay.
I know by my watch and based on where the official timing pole is, if something's out of whack, I'll find it. And just based on the fact they went so slow early, you know, everybody had a full tank of gas for the last quarter mile there. You know, top flight horses you're talking about.
Well, the horse that you saw Kitten's Joy run past in the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic was Magistretti. And earlier, Michael had a chance to chat with the trainer of Magistretti, bound for the Breeders' Cup Turf, Mr. Patrick Niancone.
And Patrick, regarding Magistretti, your hope for the Breeders' Cup Turf, in the Arlington Million and the Man o' War, he came from, I'd say, rather far back to make his stretch run. But in the Turf Classic, things were a little different. We saw him go to the lead much earlier in the race. What was this? Was it because of a slower pace, or were you concerned that you didn't wait till later in the Turf Classic? Analyze that race for us, if you will.
No, the only thing is, I think the horse is acclimatizing very well over here. He's less stiff than he was, and he's just improving, and he was so happy to run. He learned to jump from the gate, American style. He was no pace either, but, you know, anyway, I wanted to put him there because one more time this race was the prep race for the Breeders' Cup, and I would say I'm quite sure in the Breeders' Cup you have to put your horse in a good position to get a shot. You know?
Yes, I do. Magistretti's last trainer, Noel Callahan, put blinkers on Magistretti for the Arlington Million, and you've kept them on for both the Man o' War and the Turf Classic. Are you at all thinking about taking them off for the Breeders' Cup Turf?
No, I don't think so. I don't know yet, but I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, as he had been beaten last time, we got the choice. You know what is a good thing.
Yes. Patrick,
but,
go ahead.
You know, I mean, I think we're not going to change much. The only thing I can tell you is this horse is improving every day since I had him, and I'm very delighted with him. He worked this morning. For me, was one of the best work I've seen in my whole life since I'm a trainer, and the horse is going to come for the Breeders' Cup. Great.
And that again, you're reading my mind on my next question, Patrick. There's a likelihood maybe of firm ground for the Breeders' Cup. How has he trained on firm ground, both at Saratoga and Keeneland this fall? How's he handling that?
You know, the reputation of this horse is a firm ground horse.
Okay.
Him over here. You know what? He was not able to compete properly when he was in Europe yielding or soft. Well, he ran on yielding in New York, but the yielding of New York is like we call good in Europe, you know.
Okay.
But we really look forward to find a firm track. You know.
Despite his 2 good races at Belmont Park, Magistretti is now winless in 4 starts at 1.5 miles. Is that anything that we or you should be concerned with?
I watch the result on the 31st. With no more witness.
Patrick, he did not run on Lasix in Europe, of course, until he came here for the Arlington Million. Is that something that you would not have done, or are you going to keep him on Lasix?
You know, I guess I put him on Lasix or it's because he have bled, I guess, and so far we're very happy with him, and we have not this kind of problem. But you know, we do well, and it's like everything. You don't change what seems to work. You know, that's why I don't think we'll change the blinkers. I don't think we'll change the Lasix, and we just try to have him the best we can for the race, and I think it will be the case.
And finally, Patrick, with Magistretti, this is, at least to our eyes watching him from afar, this is a big, muscular, sort of a bulky colt. Do you have any concerns about Magistretti handling strategically, if you will, the shorter, tighter turf course at Lone Star Park?
I think you will love it more than any other turf course. You know, I had the experience when I come with all along, she was a big, strong mare, and you know, these horses all the time run the long stretch and so on. So when they come on a small track, they enjoy it so much. You know, it's less hard on them. You know what I think, and the way he trained on the small track is really well. And you know, I'm really confident with this horse.
Well, well, we're glad to hear that. And Patrick, thank you so much for your time on behalf of our audience on Down the Stretch. We wish you all the best on the big day in Texas, Patrick.
Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Very welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Niancone.
Thank you to Patrick, and Michael will be back next week, and hopefully the temperatures will be a little warmer for his return. Dave, I said earlier in the show that I couldn't wait for the 3-year-olds on grass to face their elders. I thought, generally speaking, the older turf horses were, I don't know, average at best. What's your feeling?
Well, when you have horses like Request for Parole winning the Grade 1 United Nations, and even Nothing to Lose, and you know, several of the horses that ran in the Saratoga Stakes, they were starting off the year in classified allowance races and stuff like that, and they kind of worked their way up to the Grade 2 level. But you always had the feeling that, you know, any kind of Group 1 miler type from Europe would, you know, clean their clocks pretty much. And then on Arlington Million Day, when Kitten's Joy ran faster in the Secretariat than they ran the Million, then that made you sit up and take notice too.
But Magistretti has been good since coming to this country, and he will likely be a major factor in 2 weeks in the Breeders' Cup Turf. We are up to our final break on this morning's edition of Down the Stretch. Thank you so much for having joined us. When Dave and I return, we are going to take a look at the final preps for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. So all of that and much, much more coming up right after these messages.
I'm Barclay Tagg. I was the trainer of Funny Side, who won the Kentucky Derby. And
you're watching
the
OTB television
the OTB television network.
We tried telling you nicely.
Get with the program.
Then we got a little bolder.
Get with the program.
Now we're practically shouting.
Get with the program. You and your friends.
And here are some of the reasons why. New York Bred race for purses and incentives exceeding $40 million. New York Bred yearling prices have risen significantly, bucking the national trend. The New York Stallion Stakes Series has expanded to 8 races worth a combined $1.25 million. New York Bred restricted stakes have grown from $75,000 to $100,000 at both Belmont and Saratoga. And they're doing okay in open company. Isn't it time for you to get with the program, the New York Breeding and Racing Program?
Welcome back to Down the Stretch, everyone. Guest co-host Dave Litvin of Daily Racing Form to my left. I'm Mark Asano. All right, 2 more prep races for the Breeders' Cup to look at, and we're going to concentrate on juvenile races, and we are going to begin with a key maiden race from Belmont Park. Inside is Sun King, outside is Patriot Act. Sun King would go on to the Champagne, and Patriot Act would go on to the Breeders' Futurity. Here's the Champagne. Sun King is number 7. He is the 3rd choice in here, and for much of the betting was the 2nd choice. But he's facing a pair of heavy hitters in number 6 of Fleet Alex, undefeated in 4 prior starts for Tim Ritchie, and number 8, Proud Accolade. And if you were watching last week, you know how much I like Proud Accolade, 2 for 2 for Todd Pletcher and John Velasquez. Sun King here basically forced to chase the pace, because the pace here very conservative, 23-3 and 47-1. And compared to the Frazette, where the fillies ran 23 flat and 46-1, this was rather conservative. So Sun King may be more forwardly placed, 3rd on the outside than Nick Zito would want. 4th on the outside, sitting a perfect trip under John Velasquez, we could say that about 10 times a day, is Proud Accolade. Just inside of him is a Fleet Alex, and Proud Accolade and Johnny are going to keep a Fleet Alex pinned inside. They're going to make the lead in upper stretch and go on to a nice solid victory over a Fleet Alex, giving him his first career loss. And Sun King is going to run on well for third. David, the first three finishers here, to some degree, all ran very well.
Yeah, when you look at the pace and final time fractions, the race unfolded slow early and fast late, which bodes very well for a horse like Proud Accolade, who was stretching out for the first time. The fact that he was able to finish so strongly and turn back the more experienced stakes performer, Fleet Alex, bodes very well. You know, Todd Pletcher is one of the game's top trainers, obviously, but there's a few things that he has to do to really move into the realm of Frankels and the Drysdales and people like that, and he's got to win a Breeders' Cup race. I think with Proud Accolade, he's probably got his best shot so far to do it.
Well, I've liked this colt very, very much at Saratoga, and Todd told everybody before the Champagne that he would have Proud Accolade good for the Champagne, but he'd have him better for the Breeders' Cup. And if that's the case, that doesn't bode too terribly well for his rivals on Breeders' Cup Day.
He's got the breeding. His grandsire is a Troop, Easy Goer in the 1988 Juvenile.
That's right.
Yes, it's true. His sire, one of the hot freshman sires this year. And he looks like, you know, he's got the positional speed. He was able to carry that over from the sprints. He wasn't rank at all. He was 4 wide. The pace was slow. He wasn't fighting Velasquez at all. He was just comfortable loping along out there. He looks and acts very professional.
And as Dave mentioned, pace, conservative early, fast late, last 2.5 furlongs, 30 4/5, which is racehorse time. We're waiting on Tim Ritchie to make a decision on a Fleet Alex. And the thing about the three finishers, the 1, 2, 3 finishers in the Champagne, if they all go on, or whichever go on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, it'll be their first effort around 2 turns. It's always interesting.
It's always the debate, do you want to get 2-turn experience, or does it matter? Maybe with a filly like Sense of Style, she'll get a lot out of the Alcibiades experience that she had. But you know, I've seen guys like Alan Jerkins, and you ask them, and they say it's under, you know, it's overrated. You know, it's just they turn left all the time, and it's just a little extra turn left, so what's the big deal?
Well, of course, with Alan Jerkins, you know, he could train anything to do just about anything.
As a general rule, I'd take talent over experience every time.
The one final prep in Kentucky for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was the Breeders' Futurity. And stalking in second is the eventual winner, Consolidator, and Bob and Beverly Lewis's Silks. He was third in the Sanford at Saratoga. In fact, his only really bad race was in his last start, where he was a mediocre fourth and a hopeful. But Lucas had added blinkers that day, and he caught the slop. And let's face it, you really can't tell an awful lot over a really sloppy track. Here, the blinkers came off. Consolidator caught a dry track. He's stalking Bellamy Road, who, to me, surprisingly, just stopped running. So Consolidator is going to inherit the lead. And ranging up 4 wide is Patriot Act. The colt who you saw run second in the maiden race at Belmont, well, he's still a maiden, and he's about to run a very good second in the Breeders' Futurity. Dave, how do you factor the Breeders' Futurity versus the Champagne?
Well, it's Dwayne Lucas we're talking about here with Consolidator. And, you know, we all know his history with 2-year-olds and winning these major races. He's certainly got the pedigree, so much for experience. First time around 2 turns and off a layoff. And he wins this race pretty much for fun. So far, he's the kind of horse, though, that's only run well in Kentucky, really, when you look at his PPs. He ran okay in the Sanford, but sometimes you see these horses, particularly ones trained by guys like Carl Nasker, they seem to run well in Kentucky, and then that's about it. Once they venture outside the borders of that state, they don't run as well.
You know, I feel at this point that the Champagne had the stronger field, and coming out of it, I feel much more strongly about horses like Proud Accolade, a Fleet Alex, and Sun King than I do about Consolidator. Agree, disagree?
I agree. Consolidator is always dangerous because of his speed. The route races at Lone Star with the tight turns there, he's going to get a pretty good position. He's got a young and up-and-coming rider in Rafael Bejarano, who's going to be, you know, equivalent to Jerry Bailey in a couple of years as far as his standing in the sport, I think. And it's Lucas.
That's Lucas, and that's dangerous right there.
You know, every year in the Kentucky Derby, the first thing I do is box all the Baffert and Lucas horses, just in case.
Now, the colt who ran second, Patriot Act. We told you on last week's show, it is so unusual for Neil Howard to run a maiden in a stakes race. But Patriot Act is owned by William Farish, and this was the Lane's End Breeders' Futurity, and he was the second choice at 3-1, and he ran well. He was wide around the first turn. He commenced a wide rally. They're not going to run him back in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. That's not going to happen. But this is an AP Indy colt who people should look at for next year.
Right, absolutely. By AP Indy, you know, so based on what we've seen from the couple of races, put them away, bring them back, you know, in the spring, stretch them out again, and you know, it's hard to say how, you know, these days 2-year-old fall form doesn't translate well to spring of the next year. This one certainly has the connections and pedigree to go a lot farther.
All right, we're 2 weeks away from the big day, but this is the last time the audience will be able to get your opinions here on Down the Stretch. So we obviously, Monday is pre-entry day. But let's talk in general about this year's Breeders' Cup. It looks like we'll have probably less European participation than we've had most years. We've lost the probable favorite for the Sprint. We've lost a couple of horses for the Classic. What are your overall feelings about Breeders' Cup 21?
It should be a good experience. I can't remember, other than the Dallas Turf Cup, ever even seeing you know, races from there. It's going to be very important. You know, they're running a fall meet there for the first time. So a couple of days before the Breeders' Cup, take a look and see how the track's playing. That's no guarantee of what it's going to be like Breeders' Cup Day. They may pave it up like a superhighway because they're going to want some track records and things like that. But my one piece of advice would be don't over-handicap and try to find, you know, in races like the mile, the one standout winner. You're not going to find it. You know, you're going to find 4 or 5 viable contenders. Wait for Breeders' Cup Day, take a look at the board, see which ones are being overlooked for some reason, and key around those.
Any strong opinions from you at this? Are you looking at a particular horse or horses in particular Breeders' Cup races at this point?
Well, if you like a short price horse, of course, you can leverage them in the multi-race exotics. Right. I think right now, Proud Accolade, to me, I mean, Pletcher would dearly love to win a Breeders' Cup race. He's got a horse with the talent and ability. He's got the right rider. I think, to me, he's probably one of the most logical favorites on the day, along with Kitten's Joy. I mean, I don't know how you...
He made a believer out of you.
Yes, he did.
That 22-3 final quarter.
Yes, off a layoff, facing older, you know, meeting a sharp horse who had a big race over the Belmont turf in the Man of War and Magistretti, and just kind of chewed him up and spit him out.
Earlier in the program, I mentioned the promotions on Breeders' Cup Day at the Teletheater, and one of them was a $1,000 win, place, or show bet on the Classic. What are your feelings about the Classic at this point?
Well, let's see. You know, I know he's going to be everybody's wise guy horse because he's already won there, but I think Dynaver is a horse you can't overlook.
Really?
I mean, last year in the Classic, he wasn't given much of a shot.
Right.
He ran on okay to finish in the money. You know, he had that one race in the Meadowlands Cup the other day. He ran second. No big deal, but that's exactly what Valponi did before he won the Classic. He's a horse that's been a disappointment. He's had some foot issues.
Right.
But I've always thought he had the talent. He's shown he can run the kind of a speed figure it takes to win a race like that. You know, when a horse like that has a nice prep and then goes to a place that he's already won, if he gets the right scenario, he can jump up.
So there it is. Dynaver as a nice,
he was
and he's got to be a square price.
Yes, he was my Belmont Stakes pick. It rained that day.
Right.
Of course, now we know he can't stand up on the wet track, of course, so that was great. But, you know, maybe sweet revenge.
All right. Most of us feel, I shouldn't say most of us, some of us feel that Pleasantly Perfect on his best is the best racehorse on dirt in the world. Dick Mandela planned this layoff. This was not something that came up at the last minute. What are your thoughts on Pleasantly Perfect?
Well, I guess trainers feel they have more control over their horses now if they just don't really have to race them anymore. They can just train them and keep them under the shed row. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, he's an older horse. He's very, very talented, but, you know, there's the Dubai question. You know, how much did that showdown against Medaglia d'Oro in the World Cup take out of him? You know, last year he was just getting good. You know, he was a year younger. He was primed to the minute. He was on his home grounds. This year, who knows?
All right. David, thank you very much for your opinions, and we've got a couple of things to do here before we leave you. I want to remind you that Down the Stretch will be back at the Albany Teletheater the next 2 weeks. Michael will rejoin me next week. We'll be back at our regular time of 10 a.m. But on Breeders' Cup Day in 2 weeks, mark this down, the show is 1/2 hour earlier. We will be on the air from 9:30 until 11, and that'll kick off a big, big day at the Teletheater. I would recommend you come down. First of all, make your reservations. Call Maureen at 438-0127. Make your reservations. Come down and watch the show. I know that morning we're planning on having Jack Knowlton live on the telephone from Grand Prairie, Texas. He'll tell us how Funnyside shipped that day, tell us the all-important weather conditions as far as Funnyside goes. So why don't you come down and watch the show and then stick around at the Teletheater and enjoy all those wonderful promotions. Speaking of Funnyside, an email last week from Scott, who was very excited about Funnyside's performance in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, as many people were. Scott said, opinion, will Funnyside be 4-1? Will he be less than 4-1 or more than 4-1? Scott, in my opinion, now, obviously, the makeup of the classic field is going to be dependent on the odds. If the field stays together, my feeling is Funnyside should be legitimate value price, 8-1 to 10-1. Your thoughts on price?
I think it'll probably be a little less than that just because so many people are familiar with him from the Derby and now the Jockey Club Gold Cup. But there's horses in there that should take the bulk of the action, like Go Sapper and Pleasantly Perfect. Just those two. I would think the third choice would have to be 5-1 or higher.
And so there's no way Funnyside should be less than 4-1.
Absolutely
no,
not.
Absolutely not. Scott, thank you very much for your email. For those of you who would like to correspond with us here at Down the Stretch, and if you've got a specific question about the upcoming Breeders' Cup, via the United States Postal Service at Down the Stretch, Mark and Mike, care of Capital District, OTB 510 Smith Street in Schenectady, 12305, or electronically at OTB-TV at capitalotb.com. Time to thank all the folks who got this week's show on the air. Pete Persico directed, Dan Hayes, Dino Contanacci, our associate producer Julie Hoxie, and thanks to this morning's special guests Patrick Niancone and Julio Canani, and thanks to this morning's guest co-host Dave Litvin of Daily Racing Form. I hope you enjoyed it. I had fun.
Absolutely, me too.
And, Dave and his lovely wife Robin and their family moved to this area, how long ago did you come up?
It was a year ago, October 2nd.
Are you enjoying life here in the great Northeast?
It's been great. It was a little cold last winter, but I hear we didn't get as much snow as you usually get.
A little cold?
A little cold.
Yeah, the winter was about 6 months long. But other than that, you're having a good time.
It's great. The spring and the summer and the fall more than make up for it.
Just May through October is wonderful here.
Yes.
Absolutely wonderful. Thanks for coming in this morning. Enjoyed it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for having joined us this morning. Remember, next week back at the Teletheater, so have a great weekend and a terrific upcoming week. And I'll see you next week.